The storm arrived without warning, fast and cruel, like it had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lena felt the cold first in her fingers, then in her knees, then in her heart. She walked through the snow with slow, uneven steps, holding her child close to her chest. Little Aaron was wrapped in layers of cloth that were once warm, once enough. Now they were thin against the biting wind. His small face was pale, his breath light and weak. He did not cry. He did not complain. He only clung to her coat with quiet trust. That silence scared her more than the storm. The road behind them had vanished. The path ahead did not exist. Snow fell from the sky and rose from the ground at the same time, erasing all direction. Trees were shadows. The hills were ghosts. The world had become nothing but white and moving air. Lena stopped walking when her legs trembled too hard to continue. She bent forward, breathing fast, trying to calm the shaking in her body. Every breath felt sharp, like glass in her lungs. "It's okay," she whispered to Aaron, even though she did not believe it. "Mama is here." She had left the village before dawn. Aaron had been sick all night, his body burning with fever. The healer had no medicine left. Someone said the next town might have help. Someone said the path was safe. Someone said the storm would come later. Later had arrived early. Lena remembered standing at the edge of the village, hesitating. She remembered the warm fire behind her. She remembered choosing to walk forward anyway, because doing nothing felt worse than risk. Now the storm punished that choice. She looked down at Aaron and gently touched his cheek. It felt cold, too cold. Fear rose inside her like a scream she could not release. Lena forced herself to move again, one step, then another. She counted them in her head to stay awake. The snow reached her knees now, pulling at her legs, begging her to fall. The wind pushed from the side, from behind, from everywhere at once. Her thoughts became heavy. A dangerous calm tried to settle in her mind, whispering that rest would be nice. That lying down would stop the pain. She knew better. People who rested in storms like this did not wake up. She searched for anything, rocks, trees, a wall, a sign, but the storm had eaten the world. Her vision blurred with tears that froze on her lashes. Then Aaron stirred. A weak sound escaped his lips, not a cry, just a breath that trembled. Lena froze. She pressed her ear to his chest, listening, counting, praying. His heart still beat, but it felt slow, unsure, like it was tired of fighting. "No," she said aloud, her voice breaking. "Stay with me, please." She dropped to her knees in the snow, shielding Aaron with her body. The cold burned through her clothes, but she did not care. She rubbed his hands, his arms, his feet, trying to wake warmth that was fading too fast. Her tears fell freely now. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have turned back, I should have known." The storm answered with silence. Time lost meaning. The sky darkened, though she did not know if it was evening or just more cloud. Her strength faded with every passing moment. Her arms ached from holding Aaron so tightly. That was when she heard something strange. Not wind, not snow, a sound that did not belong to the storm. Footsteps. Lena lifted her head slowly, afraid hope might hurt more than despair. Through the swirling white, a dark shape moved closer. Someone was walking toward them, fighting the storm instead of running from it. Her heart jumped painfully in her chest. She stood with effort, turning her body to protect Aaron, even now, even at the edge of exhaustion. The figure grew clearer, a human silhouette, alone, cold, real. For the first time since the storm began, the world felt less empty. And for the first time in hours, hope dared to breathe. The storm had not lessened. If anything, it had grown stronger. The snow fell heavier now, each flake sharp against Lena's cheeks, sticking to her wet hair, her frozen eyelashes. The wind howled as if it wanted to tear the world apart. Lena's legs ached with every step, her muscles burning from exhaustion. She felt like she was walking in place, her feet sinking deeper into the snow, leaving only shallow impressions that the wind quickly erased. Aaron rested against her chest, small and fragile, wrapped in shivering layers. His tiny body was almost weightless, yet she felt the burden of him in every bone of her aching body. She stopped briefly to catch her breath, pressing her forehead against his soft hair. His eyelids fluttered, but he did not wake. The sight of him sleeping so lightly, so defenseless, sent waves of fear crashing into her chest. The snow might be silent, but it was not safe. Every second felt dangerous. Every minute threatened to steal him away. Lena's mind began to replay choices she had made. She remembered leaving the warmth of her small home, leaving the fire that had kept them safe all night. She had walked past the familiar path because she thought she could reach the next village faster. She had believed she could beat the storm. That mistake now pressed on her like an invisible weight. The cold gnawed at her fingers. She tried to rub warmth into Aaron's tiny hands, but the feeling was already slipping away. Lena clenched her teeth, her thoughts chaotic. "I have to keep moving," she whispered, though her voice sounded small against the roaring wind. "I can't stop. I can't let this take him." Each step became a struggle. Her boots were wet, frozen from the bottom. Snow clung to her clothes in thick layers, freezing her movements. Her legs trembled so badly that she stumbled, but she did not fall. She could not fall, not now. She could not let her child feel despair, even if she did. Her mind flashed with memories of the healer. The shelves were bare when she arrived. "I'm sorry," the healer had said, voice kind but hopeless. "The medicine is gone. If you want help, you must go to the next village." She had nodded, though it had felt impossible, and set out immediately, believing she could manage the journey. But now, as the wind lashed her face, Lena realized how naive that hope had been. The storm had already found her. Aaron stirred again. This time he whined softly, tiny noises carried away almost instantly by the wind. Lena bent down, brushing snow from his face. His eyes opened, half closed, blinking at the white world around him. Her heart clenched painfully. He looked at her with trust, with faith, with a tiny spark of life that reminded her why she had to fight. "I'm here," she whispered, pressing him closer. "I won't let anything happen to you." She forced herself to move again, step by step, leaning on willpower when her body refused. Every sense screamed to stop, to surrender, to let the snow swallow her whole. But she could not. Aaron's tiny warmth against her chest was a lifeline. His breath, faint and uneven, was a drumbeat she could not ignore. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost its meaning in the storm's fury. Lena's lips were cracked and bleeding. Her nose was raw, every joint ached. She began to hallucinate briefly, thinking she saw shapes moving in the snow, shadows of trees that were not there, footprints that belonged to no one. She stopped at one point and shook her head violently, trying to chase the illusions away. Then she heard something different, not the wind, not the snow, a sound that belonged to someone alive. It was soft, distant, almost too quiet to trust. Lena froze, her heart leaped. She held Aaron tightly, pressing his small face to her chest. The sound came again, footsteps crunching through the snow, real, closer than she had dared to hope. Lena's mind raced. Could she trust it? Could there really be someone here? After hours of despair, after feeling like the world had abandoned them, could there be help? She swallowed hard, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Stay with me, Aaron. Don't sleep. Please don't sleep." She stood, teeth chattering, her body trembling violently from cold and fatigue. Yet in the distance, she saw a dark figure emerging through the storm. Each step it took toward them was heavy but purposeful. The shape grew more distinct. It was a person, alone, fighting the storm to reach them. Her chest tightened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, hope sparked in her heart. She did not know if this stranger could save them. She did not know if this person would turn away. But they were moving toward her. They were real. And in that frozen, endless white world, Lena felt something she had not felt in hours. The possibility that she and her child might survive this storm after all. The figure moved closer through the blizzard, and Lena's heart pounded so loudly she thought Aaron might hear it. Each step the stranger took seemed to cut through the white chaos around them. He wore simple clothes, worn and thin, and yet he walked with a determined strength that Lena could not explain. His face was red from cold, and snow clung to his hair like frost crystals, but he kept coming. Lena instinctively shielded Aaron with her body, stepping in front of him like a fragile wall. Her arms ached, her legs shook, and yet she stood firm. "Please," she whispered, more to herself than to the stranger, "please don't leave us." The stranger slowed as he approached, raising a gloved hand slightly in greeting. His eyes were kind, wide, and alert, scanning her and the child with careful attention. Lena noticed a scar on his cheek, faint but visible through the snow, and something about it told her he had survived hardships before. Survival, she realized, was etched into every line of his face. I'm lost," the man admitted, voice shaking, not from fear but from the wind. Are you okay?" Lena opened her mouth, but the words stuck. Her throat was raw from shouting into the storm, from begging the wind not to take Aaron. Her voice failed her. She only nodded, gripping her child tighter. The stranger glanced down at Aaron and crouched slightly, careful not to frighten him. "He's small," he said softly, almost to himself. "You've been carrying him for a long time." Lena wanted to reply, to explain that she had no choice, that the hours had stretched into an unbearable trial, but no words came. She felt exposed in front of him, stripped bare by exhaustion and fear. Yet, strangely, she also felt relief. There was someone here, someone alive and willing to see them. The stranger extended his hand slowly. "I found shelter not far from here," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm. I can help you get there." Lena hesitated, fear and instinct battling within her. She didn't know him. She had heard stories of strangers who could hurt instead of help, but the desperation in her chest overpowered caution. Aaron's shivering body pressed against her, demanding action. The child's life was more important than fear. She swallowed hard, nodding once, and allowed the stranger to move closer. Together, they began to make their way through the snow. The stranger walked with careful, strong steps, breaking a path where Lena could follow without sinking as deeply. He carried little, only his presence and the promise of warmth, yet every step he took seemed to make the storm less suffocating. The wind tried to push them back, but the stranger leaned into it, shielding them in ways Lena didn't understand. He paused frequently to check Aaron's condition, brushing snow from his tiny face and whispering encouragements. "Almost there," he said. "Just a little further, you're safe now." Lena's muscles screamed from fatigue, but she found herself drawing strength from him. Each word he spoke was like a lifeline in the endless white. For the first time in hours, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this night. The storm raged around them, but the stranger seemed to carry a pocket of calm within him. It was a strange, human warmth, something that had nothing to do with fire or clothing, but everything to do with courage and care. Lena could feel it, even through her frozen limbs. They trudged together, step by step, until a dark shape emerged ahead. Lena blinked through the snow, trying to focus. A vehicle, half buried in ice and snow, sat like a forgotten shell against the white. Its metal sides groaned under the weight of the storm. It was not a house, not a shelter anyone would call proper, but it was protection from the endless cold. The stranger stopped at the edge and glanced at her. "It's not much," he said, "but it will keep you safe until the storm passes." Lena lowered Aaron gently onto the ground, cradling him close. Her heart felt heavy and light at the same time, heavy from exhaustion, light from hope. She looked at the stranger, eyes wide with unspoken gratitude. He smiled faintly, wiping snow from his face. "We'll get through this," he said. "I promise you're not alone anymore." For the first time since leaving the village, Lena dared to believe him. The storm was still out there, fierce and unrelenting, but inside the small space they would find, warmth and safety awaited. For now, survival did not feel impossible. And as they approached the vehicle together, Lena realized something she had almost forgotten in the blizzard. Even in the coldest, loneliest moments, a stranger's hand could become the anchor that kept hope alive. The vehicle was not much, just an old transport van half buried in snow, its metal frame groaning under the weight of the storm. But to Lena, it looked like a castle, a safe haven from the endless white and howling wind outside. She took a trembling step inside, brushing snow off her coat and pressing Aaron close to her chest. The air inside smelled faintly of rust and old wood, but it was still, quiet in a way the storm could not touch. For the first time in hours, she felt almost safe. The stranger followed carefully, holding the door against the wind. His movements were deliberate, strong, but gentle, as if he had practiced helping people in danger before. He knelt beside Aaron without hesitation, checking his small body for signs of frostbite, shivering, or worse. Lena watched, amazed at the calm in his eyes, the careful precision of his hands. "He's cold, but he's strong," he murmured. "He'll be okay." Lena wanted to speak, to explain how terrified she had been, how every step through the storm had felt like walking into death. but words caught in her throat, leaving her only with tears that slid slowly down her frozen cheeks. The stranger noticed and said nothing, only reached over to place a thick coat around Aaron, wrapping him as if he were his own child. "No," Lena whispered at first. "You'll be freezing yourself." He shook his head, eyes serious but kind. "Humans share warmth," he said softly. "It's what keeps us alive." Lena didn't argue. Instead, she settled onto the cold metal floor, trying to absorb even a fraction of the borrowed warmth. She pressed her face to Aaron's head, listening to his soft, uneven breaths. Each one sounded like a small victory in the storm, a sign that life could still win. The stranger moved closer, sitting with his back against the wall, leaving just enough space for Lena and Aaron. He didn't speak at first, only stayed still, as if the calm itself was a shield. Lena realized that this was something she had almost forgotten: human warmth, human presence, the comfort of someone who refused to leave when the world turned hostile. He began to tell stories, small, ordinary stories that sounded almost magical in the quiet van. About his sister, lost once in a storm similar to this. About how someone had found her, guided her back with nothing but patience and courage. Lena listened, her mind drawing strength from the words. Even when she could not move, even when her body refused to respond, the stories gave her hope that the night could be survived. Aaron stirred in her lap, nuzzling into the stranger's coat as if he understood he was safe now. Lena felt a rush of gratitude so strong it almost brought her to her knees. She had carried him through hours of cold, fear, and endless white. And here was someone, a stranger, offering warmth without question, without hesitation. The wind outside rattled the metal van, and the snow pressed against the windows like fingers trying to reach inside. Lena hugged Aaron tighter, shivering despite the borrowed heat, but inside the fear began to loosen its grip. She was not alone anymore. Aaron was not alone. The stranger's presence was a shield stronger than any wall, stronger than the storm. Hours passed slowly. Lena closed her eyes for a few moments, letting herself rest while the stranger kept watch, his gaze never leaving Aaron. For the first time since the journey began, she allowed herself to feel tired without panic. Her body, frozen and aching, softened just enough to hope. By the time the night deepened, the van was filled with the quiet rhythm of breathing. Aaron slept against Lena, and she leaned back against the wall, letting the stranger's heat seep into her. There were no words for the comfort she felt, no way to explain how human touch and care could feel like a fire against the coldest night. The storm raged outside, unrelenting, but inside they had found a pocket of safety. Lena realized something profound. Survival was not just about strength, skill, or speed. It was about connection, about being seen, being held, and being helped without question. The stranger glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Rest," he said softly. "We'll get through this together." And for the first time since dawn, Lena believed him. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. The storm had not won, not yet. Not while humans could share warmth, courage, and care, even in the coldest, most desperate nights. In that small, frozen van, surrounded by snow and silence, Lena realized something essential. Sometimes the strength to survive comes not from fighting alone, but from letting someone else carry part of the weight with you. And tonight, that weight was no longer hers alone. Night fell slowly, though in the storm it was impossible to tell if the dark had come naturally or been pressed over the world by the blizzard. Inside the van, Lena tried to keep warm, pressing Aaron tightly against her chest. His tiny breaths were uneven, and she counted each one like a prayer, hopping, willing, begging for them to continue. The stranger sat nearby, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, yet distant enough that she could not see his full expression. The storm's roar pressed against the thin metal walls like an angry sea, but inside there was a fragile quiet. Lena's body ached in every part. Her arms felt like lead from holding Aaron for hours. Her legs throbbed from the cold and exhaustion, and yet she refused to let herself rest. Sleep could be dangerous. Sleep could steal her awareness, and with it, her child's life. Her mind wandered, replaying every wrong turn, every step into the storm, every second she had doubted herself. She whispered apologies into the silence, into the cold air, into Aaron's tiny ears, though she knew he would not understand. "I'm sorry, my love. I should have been stronger. I should have known better." Aaron stirred, a weak whimper escaping his lips. Lena brushed snow from his hair and rubbed his hands gently. Her own fingers were stiff and numb, yet she refused to stop. She felt as if her warmth alone could keep him alive, as if letting go for even a moment would be fatal. Her heart ached not only from fear but from exhaustion, from the weight of responsibility pressing down so hard it seemed it could crush her. The stranger watched quietly, leaning close when necessary to shield them both from drafts, his eyes scanning Aaron's small form constantly. Lena noticed him trembling slightly. The storm was brutal even for him. She could see it in the slight quiver of his hands, the tension in his shoulders. Without hesitation, she shifted, putting Aaron between them, pressing him close to her chest and leaning back into the stranger's side. The small triangle of heat they created became a fragile shield against the night. Words were unnecessary now. Each heartbeat, each breath, each small exhale of warmth carried meaning. They were three lives entwined, holding onto one another against the cold, against the storm, against despair. Lena closed her eyes for a few moments, letting herself feel the tiny warmth that seeped from the stranger's body into hers, allowing herself a brief comfort she had denied herself for hours. The storm screamed against the van, rattling the metal, shaking the walls with gusts so strong they thought it might collapse. Lena whispered to Aaron, telling him stories of summer days, of sunlight, of green grass, anything that might keep his mind away from the cold. The stranger joined in softly, sharing tales of rivers and animals, of a sister once lost in a storm like this who had been found. Their voices, weak and trembling, filled the van like a candle flickering against the darkness. At one point, Lena felt a surge of panic. Her eyes shot open. The stranger's coat had slipped slightly, exposing part of his arm, and she saw the faint tremor in his fingers. He was hurting too. She wanted to tell him to rest, to sleep, to take care of himself, but she could not move. She was frozen in fear for Aaron. Instead, she pressed closer, sharing her remaining warmth, feeling the strange, human bond that had grown in the past hours. They were no longer strangers and mother. They were three people clinging to life together, each depending on the other for survival. Lena realized then that human connection could be stronger than the fiercest storm, that even in the coldest, darkest night, hope could survive if shared. Hours seemed endless, yet finally, as the storm raged outside with relentless fury, Lena noticed a faint change in the world. The wind softened slightly, the snow no longer bit at her face with the same ferocity, and light, pale and blue, began to filter through the cracks in the van. Morning was coming. The stranger gave a small, exhausted smile. "See," he whispered, "storm's end." Lena clutched Aaron closer, feeling his small body against her own. She wanted to cry, to laugh, to scream in relief. The night had been long, terrifying, and almost unbearable, but they had survived, together, not alone. For the first time in hours, Lena allowed herself to rest, just a little, leaning back against the wall, feeling the storm retreat. And for the first time, she understood. Survival was never just about strength or endurance. Sometimes it was about sharing warmth, sharing courage, and refusing to let go of one another, even when the world seemed determined to destroy you. In that frozen van, battered by wind and snow, Lena felt a quiet certainty. They would live. Aaron would live. And sometimes that was enough. When morning finally came, it did not arrive with fanfare. The storm had not completely gone, but the wind had softened, and the snow fell lighter, almost hesitantly, as if unsure whether to continue its assault. Lena blinked against the pale light filtering through the van's frost-covered windows. The world outside looked endless, white, and silent, yet there was a subtle difference now. The storm had been tamed, just enough for them to move, to take another step toward life. She lifted Aaron gently, cradling him against her chest, feeling the fragile warmth of his body seep back into her own frozen limbs. The stranger stood nearby, brushing the remaining snow from his coat, scanning the horizon as though he could already see the next path. Lena's muscles ached with stiffness from the long night, but she forced herself to stand, feeling the strange, steadying presence of someone who refused to leave them behind. The snow was deep, almost reaching Lena's knees. Each step forward was a small battle. Her boots sank with every move, and the weight of Aaron pressed against her chest like a reminder that failure was not an option. Yet, for the first time in many hours, she did not feel completely alone. The stranger walked beside her, his presence a shield against the cold. Occasionally, he reached out to steady her when she stumbled, never speaking, letting actions speak louder than words. Hours passed in silence, broken only by Aaron's small murmurs or the crunch of snow under their boots. Lena felt the exhaustion of the night slowly giving way to something else: determination. The storm had tested her, almost defeated her, but the strength of survival had returned with the first light of dawn. She realized that no matter how harsh the world became, the human heart could endure when supported by another. Finally, in the distance, she saw it, a thin wisp of smoke rising against the white horizon. Her chest tightened. Life existed here. People existed here. Warmth and safety waited just beyond the endless snow. She blinked back tears, pressing Aaron closer, whispering, "Almost there, my love, almost there." The stranger glanced at her and nodded, a small smile breaking the fatigue etched on his face. "Keep going," he said softly. "We're close. You can do this." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of encouragement she had longed for through the long, cold hours. They moved steadily, each of them taking turns leading so that Lena could rest for moments, and the stranger could guide the path through the still deep snow. They left a trail of footprints behind them, fragile markers of their struggle, proof that they had survived the night. Each footprint felt like a victory, a declaration that the storm had not defeated them. As they approached the settlement, voices reached them, distant at first, then louder. Other people had emerged from their homes, responding to the sight of three figures struggling through the snow. Blankets and warm clothes were offered, and hands reached out to pull them safely into the village. Lena's legs trembled as she allowed herself to be guided, yet she kept Aaron pressed tightly to her chest. She turned to look at the stranger, wanting to thank him, to tell him that she could never have made it without him. But he was already stepping back, blending into the crowd, tired yet unbroken, a silent hero in a world that would not remember his name. "Wait," she called, her voice stronger than she expected. The villagers paused, but the stranger only looked over his shoulder. "I don't know your name," Lena said, almost pleading. He shrugged, a faint smile playing at his lips. "You don't need it," he replied. Then he disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind only warmth, hope, and footprints in the snow that would not fade so easily from her memory. Lena watched him go, realizing something profound. Survival was more than escaping danger or enduring hardship. It was the quiet courage of a stranger who chose to act, to give warmth and life when the world had only offered cold. And sometimes that simple act, sharing warmth, offering care, was enough to carry someone through the storm. She hugged Aaron tighter, feeling his small, steady heartbeat against hers. Life awaited them in the village. Safety, warmth, and perhaps even joy. Lena understood finally that even in the harshest moments the human heart could shine brighter than the fiercest storm. And together they would continue, step by step, leaving their footprints forward toward hope. Spring came slowly, almost shyly, to the village. Snow melted in gentle streams, revealing the frozen ground beneath. Trees stretched their bare branches toward the pale sunlight, and the air smelled faintly of thawing earth. Lena stood near the edge of the village, watching the world come alive again. Aaron laughed in her arms, a sound so pure and alive it made her chest ache with relief. For the first time in weeks, the cold night of the storm felt like a memory, distant yet unforgettable. She often thought about that night. The endless snow, the biting wind, the feeling of being trapped in a white world with no way out. She remembered her fear, how close it had come to consuming her. And she remembered the stranger, the man who had appeared like a flame in the storm, carrying warmth, courage, and life when everything else had seemed lost. His presence had saved them, had carried them through the longest night, yet now he was gone, vanished like a shadow into the crowd of the village. Lena watched Aaron, small and fragile no longer, moving freely in her arms. Life had returned to him, to her, to the world around them. She realized that survival had been more than endurance. It had been human connection, trust, and compassion. Without the stranger, they might not have made it. His act of kindness, his willingness to share warmth in the coldest, darkest night, had been the spark that kept hope alive. She thought of all the villagers, the people who had emerged to help them at the end, offering blankets and food and shelter. Yet even among them, she knew that the night would have been impossible without the stranger who had chosen to step into danger for someone else. Humans were fragile, yes, but also astonishingly brave. Humans carried light into darkness, warmth into cold, and courage into despair. Lena felt this truth in her bones, a quiet, unshakable certainty. The sun rose higher, warming her cheeks as she walked slowly through the village, Aaron in her arms. She looked at the footprints they had left behind in the snow, now fading with the thaw. Each print told a story of fear, of struggle, of determination, and of hope. And among them, though erased by melting snow, she could still feel the imprint of the stranger's presence, the quiet proof that humans could lift each other even in the harshest circumstances. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift slightly. She had carried Aaron through the storm, but she had not carried the fear alone. Someone had walked with them, guiding them, sharing their strength. She understood now that the world was harsh, sometimes merciless, but humans had a way of surviving that was more than instinct, it was choice. The stranger had chosen to act, to care, to endure. That choice had saved 2 lives. As she stepped into the warmth of the village, she noticed children playing in the melting snow, villagers repairing roofs, and smoke rising from chimneys. The world continued, ordinary and beautiful despite all it had thrown at them. Lena hugged Aaron tightly, smiling through tears. She whispered softly, "We survived, we are here, and life goes on." Even weeks later, she would think of the stranger. She never knew his name, she never saw him again. But she carried his courage in her heart like a lantern in the dark, a reminder that humanity could rise to meet even the most merciless challenges. People could be kind, strong, and selfless, capable of warmth that saved lives. That warmth, she realized, was the essence of what survived storms, hunger, and fear. It was humanity itself. Lena knew the storm had changed her. She had seen the edge of despair, felt the sharp teeth of cold, and yet survived. And she had learned something permanent. Life was never just about fighting for oneself. It was about reaching out when another needed you, offering warmth when the world was cold, and walking with someone else when the path seemed impossible. She smiled down at Aaron, whose small hand gripped hers tightly. "We're safe now," she said softly, "and we'll keep moving forward no matter what comes." For Lena, for Aaron, and for the stranger who had carried them through the storm, hope endured. Humanity endured. And in that quiet certainty, Lena understood the most powerful truth of all. When the world is harsh, warmth, kindness, and courage can be enough to save everything. The snow melted completely, leaving behind green shoots and clear paths, but the memory of that night, the storm, the fear, and the human warmth that had saved them, would never fade. It lived on in Lena, in Aaron, and in the quiet, unspoken strength that all humans carry within them. Even in the darkest times, humanity survives.